Present. And we'll call the Tuesday, August 19th, 2025 Planning Commission regular meeting to order. At this point, we'll do roll call, please.
Mr. Butler.
Here.
Ms. Brown. Here. Ms. Osmond. Here. Mr. Eiley.
Here.
Mr. Stannis.
Here.
Mr. McFadden.
Here.
Webster's here.
Everyone will please rise and say the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this point, we'll move on to number 3, approval of the agenda. You know, we were going to add one item to the agenda under new business, and we'll make this the new A. But we will do the election of officers for the planning commission. So we'll start with that. Are there any other amendments or changes to the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Support.
Support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, thank you. Okay, and then we will move on to approval of the minutes. All right. We'll start with page 1. No changes, page 2. Page 3. Page 4. All right, hearing no changes in the agenda from the June 24th, 2025 meeting, we'll entertain a motion to approve. So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. All right, next we will move on to public comment period. Just so everyone knows in the audience that if you are here for the dugout road agenda item, there will be a public hearing for that item, which is a new item B. But I mean, you're more than welcome to come up and speak now. So we'll open it up to the floor, so you'll have 3 minutes as an individual, 5 minutes as a group. And just as you come up, please say your name and address into the microphone, and Morgan will keep track of the time. At this point, we will start public comment, and I will start with row 1. If there's anyone that'd like to speak. Row 2.
It's not an agenda item, so hopefully that's okay. Okay. Douglas Holbein, 6865 Wiley Road. And I spoke at the council meeting last week, and I was told that maybe I might want to get in front of this group as well. There is, the Douglas City Council is moving forward with a large density project on Wiley Road. And if this group remembers, or anyone remembers, that property was transferred from the township to the city of Douglas. So a while back, when the city of Douglas purchased that property. And our huge concern is the very large density. This adds 20% increase to the population of Douglas in a 16.4 acre lot. So most of Wiley Road is in township, and we are concerned about traffic, foot traffic, pedestrian traffic, road traffic on the portion going to Lake Shore. So as a resident of the township, I sincerely hope that I get your support as a planning commission, whatever that may mean, to move forward with plans that incorporate pedestrian and walkway traffic down that road. Hopefully you're in touch with the city of Douglas and what they're trying to do there, but we are concerned as township residents because we are right there on that property. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Marco Sariano, just wanted to add to 1665 Wiley Road. And just wanted to add that there is a lot of traffic going on there. They're doing a feasibility study for traffic. And I'm not sure if you guys are aware of that, or they're gonna contact you guys with that information, but we've got Summer Grove and other communities worrying about the traffic and how dangerous it's gonna be without expanding the roads or adding sidewalks. So hope you take that into consideration, or something you guys can look into and see what's available to do. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Morgan, can I
Continue on this time. Can I continue on this time? So I forgot, is there leverage? Because if you transfer property to them, the annex property to them, So you lost that tax base as a township. And is there leverage that we can use because of that to pay for the infrastructure? All right, thank you.
And what was your name again?
Hi,
Yeah,
Marcos Ariano.
thank you.
Hi, my name is Perry Landis. I live at 20 Summer Grove. Pretty much speak on the same topic briefly. One of the points that I would like to stress is that it is currently dangerous. It's not just going to be dangerous, it's already dangerous. I'm a frequent pedestrian on that road. I walk a dog to the lake and back quite frequently. Many drivers are very thoughtful and they move over, and many don't, and many speed frequently on that road. We're often, today I saw a semi, second time I've seen that semi in 2 days, driving at a high rate of speed on that road. It just feels like it's not a good place to be walking, but there are no other ways really to easily get to the lake shore from where I live. I think that's probably true for a lot of people in that area. So if there's anything to be done to really sort of get something going in terms of, they were saying there's a traffic study being planned. I'd like to stress that it'd be great if that could be expedited. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from row 2? Row 3? All right, I think that's it. Is there anyone online?
If anyone on Zoom wants to speak, please raise your hand. Going once. Going twice. Nope.
All right, at this point, we'll close public comment. We will move on to new business, item number 8, where we will vote on the positions for the planning commission. That would be chair, vice chair, and secretary. So at this point, I believe our nominees are Denise for chair, Jackie vice chair, and Steve for secretary. So is there any discussion, comments? No? All right, so there's a motion on the floor. Anyone second that?
Support.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Or should we do a voice?
Well, you're gonna cast an
Would that-
anonymous.
Would that be effective after today's meeting? Or at today's?
Well, I figure if we vote on it, it'd be effective.
I'm not sure.
We'll just say that.
You guys can be coached for one night.
That way we don't have to move seats, so. But voice vote is fine. All right, so all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, hearing none, okay, so starting next meeting, new roles will be as such. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so now we'll move on to public hearing and consideration of a condominium conversion by North Shore LLC at 3525 Dugout Road, parcel 0320000400300 for 5 cabins at the former Pine Trail Camp. So at this point, this will, you want to give us a
Yeah, sure. I will be happy to give you a rundown. And I also have some really interesting historical documents that you're welcome to look at and I can pass around, but as many of you know, the Pine Trail Camp, and the associated cabins and buildings, and many of them have been around since before zoning. Yeah, probably around the 1950s or earlier, and I'm sure Scott has quite a few records as well. And so I spent a lot of time reviewing our files and past history on the camp. The camp itself has not had campers in probably 6 years since before COVID. And then the camp property, and about when did you close on that property?
Over last year.
October of last year, so it's been less than 12 months since you've owned it. And I also have kind of an approved site plan for Pine Trail Camp. The survey was from 1959. The planning commission approved adding 2 additional cabins to the property back in 2000. And the 5 cabins that are part of this application are included in this approved site plan. And one of those cabins is described as a lodge, kind of almost a multi-family building that had up to 32 campers that would stay in that lodge. And then the 4 other cabin buildings. So I just wanted you all to see some of that historical documentation, and I can share it around the table as well. But the camp, the applicant is not seeking to continue with the camp operation, like they're looking for a residential condominium conversion, and the reason why it's a condominium conversion is that these buildings exist today. And the condominium process is a mechanism for transferring property, so somebody could buy or the cabins could be bought and sold. So they would have a legal description and a parcel number associated with the 4 walls of that cabin structure. And then the area around that, that's part of the plans that have been proposed, would be the boundary of the condominium itself with the limited common elements or general common elements around those structures. So the land around it that is within the boundary of this application would be jointly owned and managed by the association that would be comprised of the owners of those cabin buildings. Right, I hope that's correct. Okay. So this is just for a portion of that Pine Trail Camp property. At your next meeting, there's going to be a request for another portion of that property, but we are just dealing with those 5 cabins. One of which was more of a multi-family kind of lodge structure, the bigger one to the south. So the condominium conversion process is outlined in our zoning ordinance, Articles 14 and 17. There are review standards for considering a condominium. When Pine Trail Camp has come in past requests to the planning commission, for example, when they added the 2 cabins, that was reviewed as a special land use. And an expansion of the non-conforming use through the ZBA. It was reviewed that way because the camp was not an approved or a listed use in that zoning district. And so the ordinance at the time allowed the zoning board of appeals to consider an expansion of that non-conforming use. And then the site plan came in to play. There was site plan review and approval for Pine Trail with that. Again, the applicant is not seeking to continue a camp, so this is not a, we're not considering this as a non-conforming use anymore, because actually the use that they're requesting is residential, which conforms with the R2 district. So, if you all want to, if you have any questions on my report, I'm happy to go through it. It's our position that under our ordinance, and I can read the section. In our non-conformity section, there's 21.40 on non-conforming site development that deals with it deals with site development that's non-residential, so commercial, say industrial, but also the multifamily residential developments. And I guess based on this, having the lodge as part of one of those buildings, and the fact that there will be multiple families owning these separate condos. Under the general provisions of that section, it says that the use of non-conforming sites may be continued, and sites are not required to be upgraded to conform with this ordinance so long as no site development improvements are initiated. So that provision could allow for the continuation of these cabins as they exist today, knowing that if you were to draw lot lines, they wouldn't meet the R2 dimensional standards. The sentence though related to no site development improvements would come into play, say if docks were added. So I think that's something to think about. Because we did receive a letter from the attorney from the Coastal Alliance regarding this request, which brought up questions related to the non-conforming matters on this property. They bring up the non-conforming use, which we think is moot because the campground use is not continuing. They do say that our ordinance, with the condo conversion, that these cabins would have to meet all other standards of our ordinance, but they're pre-existing cabins that were built with building, even before our ordinance, that may or may not meet the dimensional standards. Certainly, they probably don't have enough width if you were to draw parcel lines. So it brings up some questions there, but this section in 21.40 could apply to this. It might be something that is real. And the fact that we have an approved site plan for. So the other standards would be the section B under design, that the plans comply with the design requirements for platted subdivisions. As I mentioned, the buildings are existing, the site's served by a public road. They have filed to vacate the road, but that has not been approved, and I've heard that it may or may not be approved because property owners have to sign off on that, and I don't know that that has been achieved. Nevertheless, we've added a condition that if the road were to change from a public road to a private road, that we would want to have administrative review of condo plans. Under C, access management, we believe that those standards are met. The road is existing, the driveway meets the requirements of our driveway ordinance. We did want to note, though, that the bylaws mention boat slip units in two sections, 7.2 and 7.5. The master deed doesn't mention that, and it was also brought up in that letter from the attorney of the Coastal Alliance. We do have a copy of the site plan that was submitted to Eagle for docks for each of these cabins. So that's available, and I'm sure the applicant can speak to that. In terms of stormwater, the township engineer, their letter is in the packet, and they did sign off on this. No new construction is proposed. The buildings and impervious surfaces are existing. On the plans, I did not see any indication of new impervious surface, but you could verify with the applicant on that. I know that there, and then outside agencies, the fire district also reviewed this, and they provided conditional approval of the project. That letter's in your packet. Low impact development standards. This was called out in the letter by the Coastal Alliance as well. Based on the plans that we have to review, we didn't see any changes that would be impacting the topography of the property. The applicant has been working there, that's not a secret. They have replaced some of the footings of some of those buildings. They have modified some of the landscape walls around those buildings. I believe there's been some tree clearing that, or you can ask the applicant, but I believe that their intent is to maintain the wooded character of the site, and the tree clearing was related to discovering where the underground utilities and gas line and water lines are. So we just have highlighted plans of where some of the underground utilities are, because again, this is such an old development that there aren't any kind of official record drawings. So I believe some of that modification to the site is related to that. But again, the applicant can speak to that as well. So we believe that those low impact standards are met. So with that, we are recommending approval with conditions. Or you may deny this or postpone it for additional information. But if you were to move forward, we have a list of conditions in our report related to that private road, public road, if it were to change. Notification of the zoning administrator if it were to switch to a private road. Review and approve of the master deed bylaws and all exhibits and finalizing all of those condominium drawings according to the layout that was submitted. That that permits, like building, mechanical, plumbing permits could be issued because they have begun work on these cabins without permits. So this condition number 4 would say that they put, and those permits are on hold right now because they don't have an approved use. If we use multiple buildings on one parcel, multiple residential, which we don't allow unless they were to do this condominium. So this condition would allow them to continue with their building permit process, but no certificate of occupancy could be issued until a final approval of the condominium conversion was approved by the planning commission. So that's number 4. Number 5 is about submitting final condominium plans. This is just the preliminary review. Number 6 is related to boat slips. And stating that the boat slips would require review by the planning commission. Number 7 is consistency with any conditions of the township engineer or fire department. Number 8 is requiring permits from all other reviewing bodies such as Eagle, the road commission, drain commission, or others. And number 9 states that those permits from those other reviewing agencies should be in hand before any certificate of occupancy is issued or before the final site condominium is submitted to the planning commission. And then the rest of the conditions are general conditions related to fees and anything that the applicant states at the meeting or as part of their packet becomes part of the official record. So I'm happy to pass around any of this information if you'd like to see it. I can also make copies, but it's here for you. These are just originals and not that easy to copy on our copy machine.
Thank you for the overview. Sorry, I think I did jump the gun.
No, it's fine.
No, on the, so on public comment, so. But it's nice to have a review that way the audience knows and what we're up against here before public comment period. So at this point, we will open public comment. Same rules apply. You have 3 minutes as an individual, 5 minutes as a group. Just state your name, your address, and then Morgan will keep track of the time. So we'll start with row 1.
Sir, just question, what would you like to hear from the Well, asking
Yeah.
for. Oh,
Average, sure, yes, yeah. I just jumped the gun, I should have done. I looked at. No,
You should present first.
do
Then
the
go
public
to
comment
public.
period. Oh,
Then
that's why I'm stepping down. Then I'm gonna close the public comment period and we'll reopen it later, and then we'll hear from the applicant. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Carl Gabriels, attorney representing North Shore, Scott Bosgraf from North Shore is here as well. And he can certainly answer more boots on the ground questions than I can. This is pretty straight, I think a simple and straightforward application compared to some, I think. So I'd like to not necessarily have a huge presentation, but really answer any questions that people have about the structure. There might be some specific structural questions about the legal ownership that we're asking. But this, I guess just to highlight what Renee was talking about, this section 17 process is really a great process in an ordinance that allows us to do what I think everyone in the room should agree is a great thing to do, which is to reuse an existing building that's been there, that's been built, and to repurpose it, put it to another use, give it another life, rather than having to tear it down or have it sit there abandoned. And so that's what this section 17 does. It says, you have something that it was built a long time ago, and it doesn't meet the criteria of today if it was built brand new, but it can be turned into a condominium ownership structure and given a new life. Section 17 even allows for the approval of this conversion process as an administrative decision. Now, staff decided to bring it to the planning commission, which it can as well. But I guess I'm just mentioning that to give you the idea of the purpose of this section. That's the simplicity of it. And to take section 17 and try and read into it that to do a conversion, you must really essentially comply with all the other requirements would make section 17 meaningless. Otherwise, you just go through the regular condominium project process and approval. I mean, think of the old buildings, Baker Loss, Scrapyard Loss. Again, those are projects that Mr. Bosgraf had a hand in turning from an old abandoned building into a useful new structure. I would say, coming up later this month, I believe, North Shore has a traditional condominium application that will be coming to the townships. And that's a good comparison and a contrast to the two different types of processes here. That is where you have land that just needs to be divided up. And that needs to, of course, go through and meet all the setback and square footage frontage requirements of all of it. This under section 17 is completely different and allows for the conversion of a use that's already there. It's an old building. To answer a few of the questions that were raised by Renee, and I'll answer any other questions that you guys have as well. She referenced, I see it sitting right there, a previous plan that we drew that was submitted to Eagle to talk about docks. That's not being pursued right now. I mean, this is us scratching our heads trying to figure out what to do with this property that's got these existing buildings on it and figuring it out. And one of the first things that North Shore did was send that application to Eagle. Well, as we're engaging with the township, we're figuring out how we need to deal with the township. And so that's not being pursued. As staff pointed out in their report, we understand that the township has dock requirements. And that at some point when we get our heads around and the approvals done for this project, we're going to think through what would be the best approach for docks. And we will be here talking to you guys about what is permitted. So you can certainly look at that, but it's a previous iteration, it's a previous thought. It's not anything that right now is being pursued. We're starting from scratch and have those conversations with you guys. And then with Eagle, of course, because everybody's got approved those docks. Another question or comment that was brought up, this idea of, we wanted to make sure that these old buildings stay in the footprint that they are. So that's one thing that this condo structure, this conversion to condo ownership structure allows for. And you can be assured that that's something that is built into that process. As Lene said, the ownership of each unit will truly be defined by the outer walls of that building. Just like if you have in an old, like in Baker Loss or something, it's squares and rectangles that are drawn. And And that's what the person owns. So an owner of one of these could not bump out the wall and do an addition any more than an owner of a condo in Baker Lofts could break down the wall and take over ownership of the space next to them. Or expand out one of the windows into the parking lot. You just can't do that with a condominium ownership. So that's structured in here. And finally, before I let you guys ask any questions that you have, is just about the condo docs and how this is going to work. So as Lene said, the township's attorney, Nick, and I will spend some time and we will get the condo docs approved and drafted in a format the township's attorney approves. Hope you understand that. Condo docs, just so you understand, are, there is a standard set of them that many attorneys in the state of Michigan use. And they have language in there that does not necessarily apply at every instance to every development at that time. So for example, these condo docs have provisions about docks in them. Because at some point, this development might have docks. It also has provisions about people that, home businesses, people that will work from home. Well, we don't know whether that will actually apply or not, but we have them in there because it's this set that is broader than what we envisioned and use the collective knowledge and history that Michigan's bar attorneys have put together. So just understand that. That's why there's reference in there to some things that don't necessarily apply on day one. They're broader to cover different scenarios as a condominium has its life. So with that, if there's questions that you guys have about this project or I guess the ownership structure, why we're seeking this conversion.
Good question. The way I understand this, the general common elements, the person who owns their unit can't even plant anything in the general common element a foot from their house or 10 feet from their house or 20 feet from their house. Is that correct?
That is, I mean, the general common, I wouldn't say that there is a absolute prohibition. I mean, for example, the condo association could say, so-and-so, you're in charge of landscaping and planting of perennials. And you talk with your people and there's a decision on what types of flowers, what plants can be planted, and then give them permission to plant, right?
Yeah, that's an all or nothing. I think it's decided by the board where things can be planted. But an individual can't do that the way it's described now because there's no border around the structure that gives them limited common element to do something. Right.
Correct. Now that's something to be worked out with the township's attorney on the nuances of that. For example, one thing, we might designate a place for someone to park and call that a limited common element. Right.
Yeah.
So that's the details.
So you could put a bubble around these structures with a private driveway and a place to park later.
Yes.
Okay. That makes sense. Thank you.
So if I understood from you is about the boat slips, your Eagle application, has it been withdrawn? So have you withdrawn that from Eagle so that they're not even looking at that application, or is it still sitting out there in their space? So that they could come back and, saying, yeah.
They could come back and suddenly give us a permit that we're not seeking.
So are you going to withdraw that application?
Yeah, it's already called back.
So you've withdrawn? Okay.
We would have to resubmit what we were looking for if we were looking to.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the use of the garage that's there, that has a connection to another building that's outside your lines, but the garage is inside the lines. What's the purpose of that? Is that, how am I gonna get, is that for these other people to use? How am I gonna get to it? I don't see the driveway, It's just sitting out there in space, to me, looking at this, plan in space.
You're talking about the concrete? That's.
No, the garage, the building that says it's gonna be 4 garages.
Right,
At the
so
very end.
what is the question about the garages? The garages,
How-
yes.
Who's it for? How do I get there? Who's it for?
Well,
It's just sit down there in space.
sorry, I didn't hear that last.
It's just in space. I mean, it's just there.
We don't have a site plan yet. So.
So,
we don't know.
so what's that garage used? What's that gonna be used for? Who's it for?
Well, it's labeled as a limited common element for units 1 through 4. So unit 5, down at the bottom, is a large enough house that has its own garage.
Already has its own garage?
Yes.
Isn't that the lodge?
Yeah, there's underneath it.
Is it?
It's under, you drive in there, it's maybe.
Is that all garage? Is that underneath? Okay, again, I'm only looking at this,
Yeah, the bird's eye.
don't have that information.
Yeah.
So if I were unit 3, is that supposed to be like storage? How am I just going across the limited,
The general common element.
yeah, I just go right across it, doesn't matter, whatever, it's nice grass, I just go across it.
Well, there could be
I'm just asking how I'm gonna get there.
you're gonna walk.
Okay.
You're gonna either walk across grass or across
Or drive
gravel or
across it or
pavers.
whatever, yeah, all right, okay.
Right, so there's a road going through here and, that road.
But I don't see it going over to those wells, that's what I'm confused with. At least from this, I don't see it.
You're right, that's general common elements up to the garage.
Okay, how about your shipping container? That shipping container, it looks like the shipping, whatever that is it gonna be removed? Is it partly in this area and partly not? I mean, how's that shipping container?
Yes, it's either gone or it will be gone.
It will be gone?
Yeah, okay, I mean, there's a lot of things.
Well, I
There's vehicles.
mean, it's on your plan, so I was like, okay, what you're gonna do with that shipping container? Part of it's in the area that we're supposed to look at, part of it is not. So the plan is to get rid of the shipping container? Is that the plan? Okay, all right, that lodge, I keep coming back, is that going to be a multi-family unit, or would it be like a duplex, or is it just single? Okay,
And when you say lodge, you're talking about.
well, I can only refer to it as
The one at the south.
this one here. It was the big unit.
Yep.
So, but that's gonna be a single family,
Yes.
okay.
Are there any plans to add any more units into this common element?
In the common element, no.
Do we know how old these septic systems are? What their proximity is to the river?
I know, there we've gone through all the records that we literally have all about inspectors.
Okay. But doesn't that fly in the face of section 1730 under G? There is no constructive grading, tree removal, soil stripping, or other site improvements or changes until you have the conditional approval. So by your admission, you have gone against what was said here, and I think what Renee said is that they actually started construction within the unit. So you have the soil issue, the tree removal, and the work on the units, because you purchased a camp, and if I'm following what Renee said, they're allowed to keep the special use as a camp.
We have standards for non-conforming uses, and if they discontinue, I have not done a determination on the continuance of the camp use. Because the applicant is seeking this single family residential.
Right, but that's what they purchased.
They did purchase.
So I'm concerned about the septic systems. The fact that, this applicant is well aware of the amount of time that we've gone into these rules and seems like they just started without following it and then are only here now because we've stopped them from further work on it. And the other thing I'm concerned, Counselor, is that you say I should skip over the dock part. But when you start talking about docks, that include watercraft that can be used as a liveaboard for up to 30 days. You're talking a very large boat. You're not talking a 24-foot boat. You're talking 30 feet, 40 feet on up from there. And that would be quite a presence on the river. And so I have a hard time squaring that these are the documents you sent us, we read them, and you start talking about a liveaboard for up to 30 days. But I'm to forget about that. That concerns me. But.
Is there a question?
No, I don't know. I mean, Lauren said I should ignore it. I just have a hard time doing that because the docks and the Kalamazoo River are popular topics for litigation, and I'm trying to get into more of it. So.
And I don't believe I said ignore the issue of docks. Like that is something that the planning commission will absolutely be involved in. I guess to respond to your concerns, if I can.
Yeah.
First of all, I don't know that it's an absolute necessary jump to say that if you're talking about someone sleeping on a boat, it's a big boat. I have a boat in Aldean's, and my neighbor has a 26-foot boat, and they are gone more times than not down to South Haven. They have air conditioning in there. It's a small 26-foot boat with a cutting cap. The intent of having that language in there was not a granting of permission to turn these things into hotels. I mean, it's a limitation. Like we put it in there for thinking it was a limitation that would be embraced by people that say, hey, this is not going to be turned into something else. If you're seeing it differently, then that this is inviting or encouraging someone to put a boat there that is extremely large and turn it into a hotel or a short-term place to stay. That's not the intent. I mean, I believe, well, I don't know, I don't have memorized any ordinances that you guys have about sleeping on a boat or not. But I think if somebody has a boat at their house, whatever size it is, they could probably stay on it. I don't know. So this is meant as at least some sort of limitation on that. So we don't have something like this. I thought it would be received like that.
Another question. You've probably done the calculations of how many slips you could have on this frontage, correct?
We looked at it, yes. Yeah, you mean according to your ordinance?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you know that number?
No, not off the top of my head. I mean, there's, that relates to when you're talking about a width of a lot anyway. We don't have lots there.
No, it relates to frontage on water.
Like, oh, okay, so, all right, yes. Sorry, I looked at it, I know at one point, if we were trying to create separate lots. And of course, I wanted to put there. I have not been involved in calculating how many slips it could be as a shared waterfront.
When the permit was put into Eagle, was there a number associated with for X number of docks?
5.
Thank you.
I mean, and I don't think that should be a surprise. It's if we are able to, right? A goal would be so that each of these homes gets a dock. Whether that's possible,
And if that fits with the ordinance, it fits.
So unless you've been to the property, it's kind of hard to understand what a unique project this is. And I reviewed all the information. I had 10 pages of questions. We weren't submitted a proper preliminary condo plan, because this really has no information on it. It just shows the existing cabins, and that's about it. But after going out there, I don't have quite as many questions as I would have. That there are elements that we're going to want to see in the final condo plan that completely apply with the zoning ordinances. And I'm curious, was there a waiver for a preliminary condo plan? Is that why we just have the?
No, there was a.
Let's skip over some of these, because some of these have already been answered. And you haven't requested any variances yet for any of the property. What is the linear dimension of the waterfront from the north to the south? Do you have a linear dimension for that? Is there any dimensions on the plans?
I want to say it was just under 400 feet.
Just under 400? Sorry, I'm just skipping over some of this. It's pretty answered. Under section 17.4.0, which is regarding condos, it does say standards. Item B says that PC can waive compliance with the design requirements outlined for platted subdivisions. So we could, and these don't really conform to a typical condo plan because they can't really. So we do have the right to waive requirements for compliance, excuse me. And that walkway that goes down to the waterfront, according to 72 page 1 that covers waterfront access property, there should be an easement created for that walkway.
It will be removed.
Oh, well, how are people gonna get to the water?
Yeah, that was a ramp that the camp had in the base. We just didn't want to keep tearing things up with the investigation.
But there has to be access to the docks, and the ordinance states that there must be an easement for access to the water docks, should you put it up. It's just
Right.
the point that I saw.
So it'd be over a comment.
Right, so legally, in a condo structure, the common elements are, I guess it's the condo equivalent of an easement. You couldn't have an easement over property you own yourself. And all the owners own common elements collectively.
So you're gonna remove that because it's redundant, is that right?
I don't believe there's an easement over it.
I thought that's what.
But that was my question.
It's not an easement, it's just a ramp.
So
It's a physical road,
Yes.
right?
yeah, they used to launch the pontoons and the canoes.
It looked like an easement. So it's.
With the landscape work, I'm really hoping that you comply with those landscape requirements, because it's pretty torn up and a lot of trees are gone. I know you've planted plenty of pines, but just make sure that it outlines with all the landscaping requirements. And it would really be nice to see native trees planted in addition to just the white pines.
And there will be. Okay, I should go.
Yeah.
Sorry. There may be a better way to explain this. So the camp had 5 structures. We didn't know if the 5 structures were gonna survive. They were rough. And if anybody had been down there after COVID, they kind of closed the doors. And they left, so they sat closed up, no air moved for 7 years, and they were rough probably to begin with. And so water was running through them quite rapidly and through the cafeteria, et cetera. So the first thing we did is, in the building permit, put a roof on there, put siding, do a lot of the things that we did, and we went in and just closed them up. We put steel roofs on everything at the camp except for the building that is by the swimming pool and the old church building. So she goes around with, it's keeping the water out of it. But the rest of the structure is the rain and the water was just literally running through, just running them out. And after that, we had your building inspectors out there and some structures, were getting to the point where they were gonna come down in a storm or the big lodge had balloon framing in it. It was literally leaning and rotted out on the seam. So we had propped a bunch of things up and got to work. So the condominium conversion, and I've done a lot of condominium conversions, were typically meant, and you didn't really, all the rest of the sections where you went and complied with setbacks and stuff, because your ordinance was a copy of basically the same ordinance that everybody used in every township and city. I probably have done 50 of all the different cities and townships, and most of them were conversions. I've never come to a planning commission or anything for a conversion, because actually I've never even gone to a zoning administrator, because you drew up your documents like Baker laws, scrapyard laws, Woodard laws. You made your divisions, you had your engineer come out and draw them for your air spaces, quite often before we even built them, and then we just went to the township or the counties or whatever and recorded them. Your ordinance says, go to the zoning administrator and she can give you a nod and you move on and do it. Or because she said everything we do, it's like we got struck by lightning. I think I'll send it to the planning commission so they can review it. So we're here today to look at that. But the camp was rough. We pulled the records for all the wells, for all of the septic systems. Allegan County had terrible records. The camp maybe didn't do everything that it should have. Documenting things, and so literally we had them out there because there were redundant septic systems that were never removed, things that were never disconnected. There were a lot of drain tiles literally running into the river, and nobody knew where they were going to or what they were connected to. So we started there and just literally crossed it and pulled every tile that was running the river up, followed it back to the units, then followed the septic tanks, then followed the PVCs to the cottages, made sure that everything was intact. And literally, that's how we got to where we are today. And so now we still have 5 structures that I think will survive. We're down to a 5th one that your building inspector is well aware of what we're doing over there. There are 5 permits in front of the township right now for mechanicals. There's 5 permits for HVAC. There's 5 permits for electrical, and there's 5 permits for building remodeling. But they're sitting there. Because, like she said, your township ordinance doesn't allow you to own 5 structures on one parcel. This is one parcel, 25 acres, 13 buildings, one parcel. So literally, what we thought we'd get a building permit for, so that you could get inspections, and go and finish up the inside of them, figure out what you're doing with them, it's stuck. Hence, we're here today. And we're here for preliminary approval. This is literally a drawing. It's a survey from buying the property for the most part that was modified into a preliminary condo document showing general common elements. It's available to the 5 users. It's a garage divided into 4 of them that don't have anywhere to store anything if they have a pedal board. And it's one big structure that's got a big cavity underneath it. And docks, docks. Your requirement for docks is completely different than the Army Corps' requirement for docks, which is completely different than Eagle's requirement. The first thing we did was send an application to Eagle the day we bought the property, just to see what their knee-jerk reaction would be. And I have no idea where that's going. So we pulled that back and said, you know what, forget the docks for now. Let's keep moving forward, and then we'll figure out the docks. But to get them, the Army Corps, and to you agree on what docks look like, will be a bit of work, and it won't be something that'll get done this year, maybe probably not next year. But again, it has to be approved by Eagle. It's got to be approved by Eagle or by the Army Corps, and it has to be approved by this planning commission. We'll be back for that. But we need to know and have a meeting with everybody where everybody knows now we have 5 structures, we have this much frontage. Here's what we can do for docks that we could all agree on, and then that's what we do.
Is there a reason that you haven't considered hooking up to the public water system? That well?
It doesn't go in the front there, and actually, that's probably the best part of the camp property is they actually have a redundant two well system, and in the basement of that cafeteria, there's a basement underneath it. They actually have a really good water system, and there's a full loop around the whole camp property. And the water quality is really good. And so all of the structures, and we found all the water lines, it was newer, it's maybe 12 years old or so. And we have all of the health reports and all of the analyticals and stuff for the water quality, and that wasn't something that we really wanted to give up. Now, what's coming to you the next time around were just lots on Dugout Road. Those would go to the city water because the city water is sitting out front. There's no structures that exist. It's not hooked up to the system. And so it would be different, but these are already there.
So you know, there's no lead pipes or anything.
No, it's all plastic, literally. It's that, I was actually surprised because the septic, they had upgraded and continued to upgrade, but they never got rid of anything old. So that was a mess. Trying to figure out what exactly was hooked up to what or not. So it was more investigation for the last 8 months than it has been anything else. So there is no landscaping done because we don't want to tear it up anymore. It's already work. We didn't pull up the concrete ramp that used to go down the thing again because, you know, we don't need more soil, you know, sliding into a rainstorm or whatever. So when we know what everything is, then finish it. But
So I think you said this, but you had the county out to look at the water system and
We did.
the septic system. And
Correct.
so that
yeah, there was concerns because some of the neighbors were, or one of the neighbors ran through the property and it was, there was concerns about where it was going. So that's kind of what started it.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I just, so this is preliminary, therefore there are missing or incomplete decks. Okay. I think you're doing a great job. I drove by yesterday and it's really wonderful. Many of us probably have some fond memories of camps and cabins and all that, and I think it's really cool that you're keeping it.
Thank you for that. I've had a lot of the neighbors stop by. I've spent obviously a lot of time there since October of last year. And I've talked to a lot of the neighbors that are always excited with everything that we're doing, but they've been really excited about this. And they've actually been delighted because our condo docs, you know, really create a vehicle where my fear would be is people would just buy it, knock it down, and then they build a huge house there. And then all of them would be gone. And they're kind of cute. And it's just an opportunity where I think North Shores could put 5 structures on the river that just stay that way. And it just stays small and it's quaint. It's heavily wooded. We took down a pile of trees. There is no township ordinance that I'm aware of that says that we couldn't, but we couldn't put any insurance or anything on anything because this place was so overgrown. We probably took 100 trees down. And I had a few neighbors walk by and as we were doing it, said you couldn't even tell the difference. So I've seen and heard both sides of it, even though somebody wrote me a letter that didn't seem to express the same concern. But insurance companies, as we all know these days, unless they can see the roof of your house from a camera from above, typically won't insure your structure. And in this case, you couldn't tell there was a camp there or any structures from above. So there were a lot of trees that had to go, plus they were way overgrown past their life, you know, period. And if you get a good wind, they were bigger than the cabins.
I know it's not part of the project, but just out of curiosity, in kind of a, you know, a mile in the sky type overview, what are the thoughts for the rest of the property?
Well, right now, the 5 structures, and I think we're trying to make it so those 5 structures they're kind of isolated. Dugout Road, then on the other side is something different. Dugout Road, you know, the one that comes back, it's kind of weird to say dugout because it goes the other way, the other thing, but what's coming to you next month is actually just taking some of the land that's on Dugout Road back to 6th Street and dividing those into your normal lots that would be in an R1 district, including the house on the corner that used to have the vinyl siding and stuff on it. We had pulled the vinyl siding on that, put wood siding, and then just tried to get rid of it. It was kind of a subdivision looking house that was always sitting there, with a steel roof on it, just tried to make it look a little more in tune with the neighborhood. So the next one kind of breaks that house off and then 4 more lots up to 66th Street. So then you're left with the pieces that are behind both this and that. And I don't know, we sat with Lene and Kenny Dennison and I the other day, and we're like, well, maybe we should have sold it and taken the fault. And then we could put a garden and some chickens back there, and we could turn that cafeteria into a private lodge or something and have farm to table food there or something. So we don't know, and I mean, again, we'll be back in front of you, because if we decide this is only agricultural, and we put greenhouses back there with some chickens, I mean, that could happen. I mean, I don't know. Right now, it was just to try to preserve the structures. We put a roof on the cafeteria because you could fall through the roof. And so, for to that point, we'll talk about it any further.
Thank you, I was just curious. So. All right, thank you, yeah. At this point, we'll open up for.
I have a question, Lene, in regards to the abandonment of Dugout Road. Where would it be abandoned from? If I'm looking at this plan.
Yeah, I have that, Charlie. But again, I don't know that that is moving forward, but I can pass this out. We did have to get signature approvals.
Right, so the dugout road is vacated from West Billy's cottage and going back into the North Shore property.
It's already,
Portion of it already is vacant.
okay,
Okay, and then this section is what they were seeking to vacate and then transition to a.
Correct, but we would need all the property
Right,
owners, the
so-
village laws to agree, and they've decided that they were interested in that, so that's off the table at this point.
okay. There's a question from the, also, from our engineer about the wellhead, protection area. Is there a particular area within this that, the site is shown to be in the wellhead protection area? Do we need to be concerned with that?
I don't believe that we need to be concerned with that. Our wellhead protection area prohibits certain uses.
Okay,
But residential isn't one of those uses that's prohibited.
Where
okay.
are those wells located? I'm just curious, relative to the cabins,
Right.
where are the two wells located?
They are just, so if you were in the cafeteria, if you walked out the back, go off to be the north and the northeast corner.
Okay.
So why would our engineer put that in there? It's number 5. This site is shown to be in the wellhead protection area, section 5.50 should be referred to in the zoning one. I'm a little confused as to why the engineer mentioned that.
Because it is.
I'm just thinking about the property that with the barndominiums that we had to have access to the area.
This is the wellhead protection also.
Yes. Where in the plan is that? Are we gonna see that on another plan? I'm a little confused with that.
No, it's in the wellhead protection.
He's just letting us know that it is in there, so in that wellhead protection overlay district. We have a prohibition of certain uses like junkyards, the use of oil, waste oil or similar liquids.
So we don't have to have access like to a particular well or anything?
No,
Okay,
no,
all right. That's all.
The condominiums, it's a well field, the township.
Well, again, I only hear the wellhead protection area. I don't hear any of these other little words, so that, as long as that's fine, so that's what. Okay. Those are.
Anyone else? Okay, well, at this point, we'll open it up to the public comment period, and at this point, like I said the rules before, 3 minutes as an individual, 5 as a group, and just come up and state your name and your address, and Morgan will keep track of the time and let you know when your time is up. So we'll start with row 1, row 2, and row 3. That's it. Is there anybody on Zoom?
If anyone on Zoom would like to speak, please raise your hand. Going once. Going twice.
All right, at this point, we'll close the public review period, but so we'll close that and then we will move on to the section works plan. Want to have any comments? We haven't already discussed. I know I drove out there and this plan really doesn't do justice.
Yeah.
What's.
Well, I drove out at all, we couldn't figure it.
We totally lost. So
Yeah,
when I went out there, I was like, okay, I'm lost. So these plans don't really help me in understanding exactly, I mean, I get what they're doing, but at the same time, this is like, wow, to me, these plans were.
So I'm hearing on the
Minimal.
final, if they were to submit, either come back or with final or come back with their preliminary, that you would want more detail on the plans with the dimensions and
Yes.
setbacks.
Yeah.
You know, existing and proposed conditions, like for example, the shipping container, like if it's not gonna be there, then don't have it on the plans. You know, parking,
Are driveways going to be going in?
I guess one solution would be, since they're coming back next month anyway, if we postpone this, that would allow them to. They've heard the question put to them, that would give them the opportunity to upgrade this plan, any modifications. So we could consider it at the same time we're considering the other development.
We come back for a final approval.
Yeah.
So what we're looking for is a preliminary approval.
Right.
So that we draw up the plan with all your comments, and then we present them to you for final approval.
Correct.
But I don't know if that's 30 days from now. That might be 6 months from now. Because, like you said, we have to figure out, is there a driveway? And there's gonna be one, where is it? Is there a parking spot? Where is it? We need to investigate more on the property to kind of figure some of these things out. And so my goal is get a preliminary approval to make sure that we're all on the same page. And we like the idea and the concept, and you want the structures to stay standing. And then let us finish up the plans and draw our little cubes of airspace and stuff, and then bring that in our final plans. Get the blessing from your township attorney on your final approval. And when we have all that, then we record them. So I understand it as a two-step process, but I think we need an initial one that it's 5 structures, it's this piece of land. Let's get going.
Under conditions, I'm wondering if we could add a couple of things. On number 8, where you're saying all outside agency construction permits, you should probably add a USACE in there, just because it's required at the docks. There, you need a permit for the docks from the Army Corps of Engineers, which you know already. I'm just saying that should be added to item number 8. And then well, you're going to be submitting a landscape plan too, along with finals. And that's it.
Yes, I would like to see some buy-in from, and maybe this will come later on. Once you come in with more of a formal plan, but just buy-in from our engineer regarding the wells, septic, which as long as the county signs off on, I'm sure they're fine. Just to talk, because I know also, I mean, we are close to the to an existing water main. And I don't know what the township kind of public works overview is of, like, if you have an existing main there, and whether or not, you know, it's something that we're pushing people to tie into because it's there, and we prefer to have people on public water supply as opposed to wells, but I don't, I'm not 100% sure what our position is on.
don't think you, like, Riverside Drive, put water in front of all of those cottages, or those homes there, not all of those hooked up to your new water system, it's not a requirement.
Well, yeah, for those who are existing homes, and this is a new
Those
project,
are existing structures.
right? No, I'm just saying, I just think we should have the standard approach, for when the projects come in. If they're, this is a model we're gonna use, and we should stay with that model for each project that comes in and not, be consistent.
Like the barnuminium would be the other side of that, because the barnuminiums were new structures. On an existing well, that we had an existing well there, but if you remember right, we came before you would put a new road in. Or new structures, putting new water in, and we're connected to those. Here it's different because you're an existing structure that's already hooked to an existing good water source. And we're simply trying to just convert it so that we have an ownership vehicle, get the ability to push permits through it.
Right, I understand what you're telling me.
I'm just saying.
I'm just saying that I'd like buy-in from our engineer and staff that what our approach is.
Yeah, I think if it's not a public water supply, public well, it still has to have approval from Eagle. So they would also have to look at that. And then my other concern is whether or not we'd be consistent with past decisions and prohibit short-term rentals or not.
Well, it does say 30 to take 3 months or better.
We eliminated
3 months.
documents. Huge fan of that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because it looked like in the condo docs that it spelled out that it's for a family.
Correct.
Which, I think I read that right, and that prohibits you renting.
Correct.
Correct, yeah,
It's a no rentals less than 90 days.
or no rentals less than 90 days.
And it's maybe your turn.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't see that. I know in my neighborhood we do less than 6 months, but. Yeah.
I have a question in regards to the number of these, you're asking for the 5 buildings, but is that garage? That's an existing building.
It's
Is that part of this?
That would be part of this.
So he's asking for 5 buildings plus the garage.
The garage, which it's an existing building.
That's correct, I see that, but it's changing its use, right? Because it's not a garage
It's
now.
an access, it would be considered
Yes.
Guess I didn't see that one.
as an accessory.
Okay. Somebody building, I don't know. Okay.
I guess at this point, I will open up, entertain a motion.
Well, I would approve with conditions, I'm probably not saying it. Yes.
Okay, so
So you're saying that, you would approve, this, public hearing consideration for the condo conversion of by North Shore LLC, located on Dugout Road, parcel 03220-004-003, for 5 cabins at the former public camp. That would include the provisions that were made in the planning commission, or no, I'm sorry, the township plan 1A Wells recommendations, 1 through 13.
With the change of adding to item 8, The Army Corps of Engineers. Item 14, submit a landscape plan and full detailed plans with dimensions and meeting the requirements. That there be the well and septic plans and permits with engineer comments related to connection to municipal water. We just would like to have their feedback on that.
Yeah. Yep.
And I believe this is already in there, but that there would be no rentals for less than 90 days.
Is it also important that we say this is a
Preliminary, yes.
and we don't have that word anywhere, I haven't heard it, so. So
It's
this is
stated
a
somewhere, so let's-
preliminary consideration of condo conversion. That's what he's requesting is a condominium conversion.
In recommendations, it does say below is a summary of the conditions for the preliminary plan.
In the motion,
Oh, in the motion, yes.
I would add that again.
But I don't know if it's important, it says 5 cabins here, there's actually 5 cabins in a garage, should we be specific?
Yeah, thank you. The accessory building.
Okay, is that everything?
I support it. I support it.
Right, is there any other discussion on it? No? At this point, it's
Roll call. Mr. Butler,
No,
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Osmond,
Yes.
Mr. Eiley,
Yes.
Mr. Stannis,
yes.
Mr. McFadden, Ms. Webster is yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to item B, the housing strategy discussion of nine, Patrick of Flywheel and here. Keyhole.
Yeah.
Keyhole, progressive companies, I guess Eric is working with the township on housing strategy for Blue Star Highway.
Okay, Ryan should be on our virtual, yeah, great. Okay, I will just give a little introduction, and our manager is here as well, Daniel DeFranco, and he can also chime in and fill in any blanks that I might have, but as you know, this township applied for a housing grant through the state of Michigan. We were awarded funds for that. And Progressive Companies was hired to help us with kind of identifying strategies for housing, specifically along Blue Star Highway. As we began to think about that, implementing the safety plan and how we might envision infill and new development where we already have access to utilities, where we have great connection to Blue Star Highway, so we have good access, where we have the Blue Star Trail, where we're seeing a lot of growth and development. We also thought that infill housing could help us achieve some of the traffic calming that we were looking for. Specifically, as we think about how buildings are placed on Blue Star Highway, perhaps even looking at this idea of hamlet style development at specific nodes. So that was kind of the genesis of this grant that we received, and we hired Eric and his team to help us with that. A housing survey went out to residents. They're going to report back on some of those findings, as well as some of the preliminary recommendations that they're looking at. Ryan Kilpatrick with Flywheel has a long history in the Saugatuck and Tri-Communities area. So Ryan was the planning and zoning administrator and planner for the city of the village of Douglas several years ago, before working with the MEDC, and then Housing Next, and now he has his own firm, Flywheel. So Ryan did present to the planning commission a few years ago before we embarked on our zoning ordinance rewrite. several of the recommendations that he shared during those initial presentations are included in our new ordinance, but we thought it would be good for him to talk a little bit about the changes that he's seeing in the housing market, some new opportunities that exist, with different, funding strategies at the state level, and also speak to this idea of hamlet development. So, we had some money in our budget, and we thought it would be great to invite him along to share with you some of the work that he's been doing in and around this area and West Michigan. And then we'll transition over to Eric, who has a presentation for you all about some of the initial findings of that housing work that we're doing. Did I leave anything out? Or anything to add?
No, I think that was really great. Yeah, that was really great. I think one of the reasons that we picked Ryan Kilpatrick, I think everyone has a subscription to Michigan Association of Planning. If you don't, let us know. But Ryan had a really fantastic article in the latest edition that addressed the redevelopment of old strip malls, which we have a strip mall right next to us, but it got me thinking about how we might see some more redevelopment and maybe some infill like Lene is talking about, especially along Blue Star, given that that's where our infrastructure and infrastructure is very expensive to install. It's very expensive to maintain, and it's very expensive to replace. And as opposed to looking at a sprawl strategy where we keep extending the utilities, I think a smarter strategy for the township, a more cost-effective strategy would be to take more advantage of where existing utilities are, but then also integrate what we've learned from our Blue Star plan about, managing drive accesses on the road and seeing if we can, encourage new development to be closer to the road and maybe the access not be directly on Blue Star. So kind of taking those best practices and then looking at Blue Star as a test study. But then also kind of being somewhat scaled back in what we're doing and being very intentional. So it was kind of the perfect mix, like a lot of the conversations we were having with Eric and Progressive really hit on what Ryan was talking about in his article. So we think it's gonna be, I'm really excited to hear from Ryan directly, and we thought it would be a great learning experience for all of you and a great segue into what staff has been talking about with Progressive.
Could I ask for two definitions so that I can bring this out and understand it better? What do we mean by infill? And I've heard the word hamlet before, but I confess I don't know exactly what it means.
We're trying to figure out what hamlet means too. So, infill is the practice of, taking, say, vacant parcels that are within, an area that already has development around it. And filling in the blanks, with new development. It could also be, redevelopment. Maybe there's underutilized buildings, or properties that could be redeveloped, so those could be filled in, or maybe there are underutilized buildings that could have additions or change the use. That's also sort of a form of infill development.
Would the old Hayworth property qualify as an infill opportunity?
Yeah, infill, yeah.
There used to be a building there.
Yeah.
Now,
Yep.
That's not in the township.
Yes, correct. But that's
So therefore, I mean, I get what you're saying, but that wouldn't have any effect on us because it's not in the township.
You might
No,
have,
yeah.
you might have, say, a site that has an abundance of parking. And maybe they don't need all of that paved area and they infill some of that site with another use too. So they keep what's there and then add to it. And then with hamlet, it's a word that we're using that, I think we got that word from, Chicken down in Chicken. So where they have, they've made some changes to Red Arrow Highway, so they've narrowed Red Arrow, kind of like the Douglas has done. And then they're seeing some new development along Red Arrow now that it's not a speedway. I mean, I don't mean a gas station, but I just mean, that it's a more welcoming, walkable place to reside and to be, outside of a car. So, so they're calling that area Hamlet. And so we decided that that was a great term and evoked the sense of what we're looking for here as well.
Thank you.
All right, Ryan.
All right, well, thanks for inviting me, I appreciate it. Lene and Eric are both outstanding planners, great collaborators to work with, so I'm excited that I get to be a short-term part of this team. My firm has been doing a lot of corridor planning across the state. We finished a corridor plan in Kent County. We're working on plans in Kalamazoo County, Grand Traverse County, as well as with the city of Kentwood. And really thinking about like this term infill, when you have infrastructure, when you've got sewer, water, roads already built out, ready for additional housing or businesses, or both in some instances. What we really want to try to encourage is utilizing that existing infrastructure before we continue to expand more infrastructure outside of that kind of urbanized footprint. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Lene mentioned I've got a background that's really focused on housing for our regional workforce. Housing Next was founded to serve Ottawa and Allegan counties and then expanded to include Kent and now Muskegon counties. And our focus was really on understanding middle-income households who were struggling to find housing they could afford. So our teachers, our firefighters, our sheriff's deputies and police officers, a lot of the people that we really rely on to run our communities are struggling to live in those very same communities. And so what we wanted to be able to do was find opportunities to create housing options without needing a lot of subsidies, using kind of market-based approaches to create those infill opportunities, but also creating really great neighborhoods, right? We want to have high quality of life for everybody. And so we don't want to sacrifice on amenity-rich green spaces or walkability or high-quality school districts. We're not trying to relegate middle-income households out of our community. We really want to welcome them in and yet not have to come up with a lot of government subsidy. So if it's okay, I'm going to share my screen and walk through a quick presentation. And y'all are free to interrupt me at any point if you want to. You can cut me off and say, I'm out of time, but I'll try to be quick here. Really briefly, Allegan County conducted a housing needs assessment last year, which found an additional roughly 2,400 homes would be needed over 5 years. A big chunk, or actually it's the 2,400 are needed that are priced between 150,000 and 379,000. Now in Saugatuck Township, you guys know pretty well, this is below market rate. We're not really building houses at 379, and we're definitely not building houses at 150,000 in Saugatuck Township. We're really not building anything under 300,000 anymore, almost anywhere. And we'll talk about why that is. In part, it's because we've got a mismatch between the cost of construction and what many middle-income residents can afford. We also have a mismatch between the average household size and the size of the current average home. So most households are 2.2 people or fewer, and we'll talk specifically about that. And yet the typical house we're building is 2,500 square feet. So, I mean, it's great if you want 1,200 square feet per person in your house and you can afford it. But we've also got a lot of middle income folks who can't afford a 2,500 square foot house given today's current cost of construction. And you guys know this better than anybody, competition with second homeowners and seasonal rentals creates scarce housing supply, which drives prices up. So this is really who we're trying to solve for. Middle income folks, elementary school teachers, firefighters, earning a decent salary, right? 66 grand 10 years ago was a great salary. Now, because of rising housing costs, it doesn't get you anywhere near as far as it used to. And these are what our demographics look like in Allegan County. Saugatuck Township is actually skewed more heavily in this direction. you've got almost 2/3 of households are single adults or couples with no kids at home. Less than 30% of households are families with kids. And yet 95 to 98% of our vacant residential land is zoned exclusively for large lot single family homes. And again, that's great for all the people who can afford the large lot single family house. But we also are recognizing that not only do we have middle income households who are looking for smaller options that are more in line with their budget, we're also finding a lot of retirees who are ready to downsize. We're finding, frankly, relatively affluent young professionals who don't want a big yard or a lot of maintenance. And so we want to be thinking about how do we do things just a little bit differently while leveraging existing infrastructure. So what does it cost to build today? How does that compare with what people can afford? And what's needed to ensure adequate options? Just to level set, typically the minimum cost to build new is $265 a square foot. Saugatuck Township, it's probably a little higher because you've got those higher end homes that are sometimes getting built for $350 or $400 a square foot. But that means a minimum 1,200 square foot house is being built for $318,000. Then when you add in the cost of land, you're totaling $388,000 minimum. This is kind of the bare minimum price point. That's a $2,900 mortgage payment. Again, that's fantastic for all the folks who are earning $115,000, $125,000 a year. But we also want to solve for some other folks. And when we have existing sewer and water and road infrastructure, we've got to be thinking about how are we paying for all the infrastructure over its 70 to 80-year lifespan. When we have a 100-foot minimum lot width requirement and a single family house on that 100 feet, what we're usually taking in is somewhere on the order of $600 to $1,000 a year in annual tax that goes direct to the local municipality or the county road commission that's responsible for paying for all that infrastructure. So that's one house on 100 feet. If you put 3 houses on that same 100 feet of infrastructure, you get less tax revenue on a per house basis. So you drop from $722 per house to $516 per house. But per 100 feet, what you get is roughly more than double the total tax revenue to help cover the cost of that infrastructure. Now, we recognize there's revenue sharing that comes from the state that doesn't come through property tax, but this is one way to illustrate the point that building new infrastructure requires an average of $130,000 per 100 linear feet. So if we continue to expand growth in Saugatuck Township and Allegan County well beyond the existing footprint of our communities, we're going to have a lot more infrastructure that we have to pay for. And we're not necessarily guaranteed that our existing homes, our existing property tax can pay for the infrastructure we already have. So here's an example of how this works. Typical zoning, we would allow on 18 acres, we'd allow around 38 houses. Average price point is going to be around $495,000. Our lowest price point is going to be $395,000. New taxable value is almost $9.5 million. That's pretty good. New public school students, maybe 14, assuming about 25% of households have kids. And you got about 2,000 square feet of road per dwelling unit. So not terrible. But then if we compare that to that hamlet style development, right, where we get a mix of maybe some single family on these larger lots on the periphery, but also some townhomes or some attached condominiums here around this central square. You might even get some mixed uses. And let's imagine this is Blue Star. Right now we're getting 146 new homes on the same 18 acres. Our average price falls from $495,000 to $375,000. Still not affordable to a low income household, but it's more attainable to a middle income household. Our lowest price point for maybe a 1-bedroom condo is now falling below $200,000. And our new taxable value is more than double what it was previously. It's up to 23, almost 24 million. And we're getting more than double the public school students. Our local public schools are funded on a per student basis. And meanwhile, we've dropped our square feet of road per dwelling unit, right? So this becomes a much more financially viable way to build when we have access to sewer and water. So just a couple of quick examples, thinking about smaller single family homes on small lots. Imagine all of our kind of retirees as well as young professionals say, a bank manager or a restaurant manager who really wants to own their own home, but doesn't need 2,500 square feet on an acre and a half. These are great options where you can get a 1 bedroom, a 2 bedroom, and maybe even a 3rd bedroom up in kind of a gabled roof, but on a pretty small footprint, right? You can do as small as a 30 by 60 foot lot, maybe something closer to 4,000 or 5,000 square feet. But this house we can build for somewhere between $150,000 and $350,000, depending on the level of finish and the size. We don't need huge lots to do that. You could do 1 or 2 houses per lot, depending on the lot size. And this gets you an average density of somewhere between 12 and 25 units per acre. There's a lot of opportunity to do this. We've got some good building plans. Again, young professionals who are looking for that first toehold into the home ownership market. There's a version of this at the corner of 16th and Central, just outside of downtown Holland, that did really well. They sold 10 years ago for about 110,000. Now they're selling for more than double that. Today, we can still build this product and sell it at a price point that nets just under $1,000 a month in mortgage and insurance. A slightly larger version costs about 50% more. This gets you a 2nd bedroom. Again, it doesn't need to be on a huge lot, 3,200 square feet or a 40 by 80 foot lot. We can do something like this where you've got a single family house with 2 beds upstairs and a guest suite in the back. This is an opportunity for mother-in-law, for live-in nanny. It could just be a friend who you don't want spooking around in your kitchen, and so you got this guest suite in back. But when you add in that $700 a month in rental income, and assuming you might want a prohibition on short-term rentals here, it gets you a net housing cost of under $1,500 a month, which is great compared to the typical costs of homeownership. You're going to get folks who say, there's not enough green space, this is too dense. So this is typically how we're building residential housing in most of West Michigan, where you get this giant lawn, right? We have these green space set asides where you have a 35-foot setback or a 50-foot setback. Most people are not hanging out in this front lawn. It's just grass that we're mowing, but it's not doing anything for the community necessarily. Sometimes kids are playing ball out there, but a lot of times kids are in the backyard. When you get these smaller lot sizes, especially in kind of a hamlet style development where units are closer together, you get these much more intimate green spaces that actually become much higher functioning. They're much more communal and kind of relationship oriented. People really enjoy these smaller, intimate green spaces as compared to those big, giant lawns that we're not really sure what to do with. We also can be using these shared green spaces. So you might have a little garden that kind of surrounds your house, some private green space, but also this shared green space where kids can go through, play catch or do cartwheels, or you can set up a little fire pit. All of that stuff is still possible. So here's an example we're working on in Ludington right now. There's an old landscaping company on about 1.4 acres, and we've got a 23-unit development proposed in a couple of cottage courtyard configurations with attached garages behind, accessory dwelling units above. This is really helpful in supporting the local neighborhood small businesses, right? You start to get these levels of compact development, and you can support a little coffee shop or a bakery or even a cafe in some instances. And you can see how we can arrange these houses so that maybe you have single family homes, maybe you have attached houses, but there's lots of ways to do this where we can cluster housing close to amenities along a major corridor. And what we need to do in the process of thinking about these things is understand that the 5 basic costs of development are right here: land, construction, design, permitting and professional fees, and then financing. Local government has the ability to influence all of these things, primarily through zoning and our processes and procedures. And so thinking about allowing more compact development on less land can really reduce your land cost. Minimizing use restrictions and floor area requirements, as well as burdensome parking requirements, can reduce your construction costs. There's lots of ways that we can start to bring costs down. We have to recognize that if land is X, most of the time, the total cost to build something is about 5 times that. Very often the land is somewhere between 10 and 20% of the total cost of the project. Important caveat, zoning does not automatically make anything affordable, right? If there's a lot of demand in a place and there's no way to kind of restrict what something sells for, even if you have great zoning in a really high demand place, it's still going to be expensive. But if we're not using zoning as a way to enable these kinds of creativity and innovation and more compact development, then we can be sure that things are going to be very expensive. The other important point here is density does not determine property values. We're often hearing from local neighbors that they're very worried that their property value is going to go down if we allow more density or more compact development in a place. This is not backed up by any economic data. We've done study after study after study across the country. We've got lots of peer-reviewed science now that shows actually higher density neighborhoods command much more stable home prices over time, and where they're amenity rich, where they're walkable to things that people really want to walk to, and that can be trails, it can be schools, it can be libraries, or it can be businesses, we actually get higher property values per square foot. So really want to ensure that everybody understands we are not in any way undermining property values. We're trying to actually boost values over time while creating wealth for the local community and creating more opportunities for wealth creation. So some quick examples of what does a hamlet look like? It's kind of like a village. Typically, it's smaller than a village. So it might be anywhere from 50 to 500 little houses in a compact development pattern where you've got a variety of choices. You might have some condos, some townhouses, some detached single family, but it all comes together in a really kind of a small town cohesive way. And what we're really trying to advocate for across the state is that we take these more kind of suburban, rural, commercial corridor environments, and we start to fill those, right? Where we have big parking lots and giant lawns that aren't really doing a whole lot for the community. How do we begin to fill in that space with this hamlet style or village style development that increases taxable value, creates more opportunity for small business, and creates a greater variety of choices for small families, for large families, for folks who want to be in walkable neighborhoods. This is another example where we're kind of filling in on some of those parking lots, some of those spread out land uses in order to increase the sense of vitality and increase local property values. So to wrap this up, an important point that we always try to make is that roughly half of the local market is looking to be in these walkable, amenity-rich neighborhoods in close proximity to things that they can walk to, that their kids can walk to, that their parents or grandparents can walk to. And they're willing to sacrifice square footage. They're willing to sacrifice yard area if it means they can be in those places. Now, that means that the other half of the market still really loves being in rural and more suburban environments. And that's the beauty of a community like Saugatuck Township is you have the ability to offer both, right? You can continue to preserve those expanses of fields and farms and forests with light touch development that's spread apart. And you can have these more walkable, amenity-rich neighborhoods along the corridor where you have infrastructure. And of course, we always recommend multimodal infrastructure, create space for walking paths and biking paths so that people can get around. The investment in infrastructure is really important. And I know the Blue Star Trail is continuing to be expanded. Your investments in the roundabouts are really helpful for that walkability. Keep up all of that great work. And then the last thing here is just ensuring that we don't have arbitrary limitations on development where you have existing infrastructure capacity and where the community has said they're in support of a greater variety of housing types and price points. What you'll often find in local zoning ordinances is the standards are random. They're somewhat made up. They don't make any sense. They're not rooted in science. So really think about what are we trying to achieve, and let's not overburden the opportunity for new choices with expansive lot sizes or big spread out parking lots. Let's minimize the burden on potential and really create more opportunity across the community to create more choices in the marketplace. So I'm happy to hand it over to Eric or take any questions as you like.
I'm a retired architect, and in my career in Chicago, and what planning commission disapproved the higher density residential project on Blue Star, and people are like, oh, traffic, hopefully density. Do you think that's true?
So what I would say is we're going to add more people to the community no matter what, right? What likely is going to happen under the status quo pattern is we're going to add more people farther and farther out. And that means they're going to have to drive more to come into the community to do all the things they're going to do no matter what. So the farther we spread things out, the more trips we're all required to take by car, which means the more traffic we're going to have. The more we allow compact development to be close together and we create the choice for people to say, hey, for this trip, I'm getting in my car. But to also say, you know what, for this trip, I'm sending my kid 6 blocks down the road, who's 15, to go pick up the stuff that I would otherwise get in my car for. Or we're all going to go for a family walk and go get dinner or go get ice cream or whatever it is. Right now, I think about going to get ice cream on Blue Star Highway. We're probably going to hop in the car and drive down to go get ice cream. The more walkable and amenity rich that corridor becomes, the more likely it is you're going to have people biking and walking and using different modes of transportation. So that's a long way to say the community is going to grow one way or another. It's how spread apart do you want people to be? And the more spread apart they are, the more likely they are to drive.
Yeah, that was a great presentation, though. Very helpful. Thanks.
Do you all have any other questions for Ryan, or do you want to hand it over to Eric? Ryan, did you want to? Oh,
quick question.
Gordon has.
One of your early illustrations, like an aerial view, 3/4 perspective, it showed a small house on a 34-foot wide lot. Are you proposing that we decrease side yard lot restrictions to pull that off? That didn't look like 10 feet.
Yeah, I mean, minimum building code requirement is 5-foot side yard setback. You don't have to go down to minimum building code. But oftentimes we'll see 20-foot side yard setback requirements. And when you've got 2 houses side by side, that means the houses are spread 40 feet apart. There's a whole lot in there on 40 feet. You could put another house in there and still have 10 feet on each side. So, really think about what is necessary for the community character in Saugatuck Township in those specific places. And if that side yard is really important to people, that they have kind of the separation distance, by all means, code in the way that works for Saugatuck Township. But in my experience, most people don't use their side yard. It's more a matter of, are we offsetting the windows so that I'm not staring out my kitchen window into your kitchen window or your bathroom window, right? Let's think about adequate window placement. But in the places where people are excited to live close together, and I am completely going to honor the fact that not everybody is excited to live close to their neighbor. And so we have to have choices for people to spread out and have some distance. But there are absolutely some people who are very excited to live in those more compact neighborhoods. And in those places, it's more about kind of design aesthetic. How do we make sure that we're getting those details right so that living close to your neighbor is a really enjoyable opportunity?
Okay, thank you. Anybody else, right? Thank you so much for your presentation. We've recorded it, so we will have it available if anybody else wants to listen to it, especially our township board and other, Parks and Rec Commission perhaps and others. So thank you so much for your time, for joining us, and I'm sure we'll lean into all that you've shared tonight. You're welcome to stay. I know it's a late night. We all have first week of school, but you're welcome to stay with us and hear Eric's presentation, but we'll switch over to him now.
Sounds great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Ryan.
Ready. You have persevered.
I made it. I made it. I texted Ryan. It's always tough following the condo hearing, but we did it. No, it's great. I mean, it was great, and like Ryan said earlier, it's really good to work with Lene and the township, and it was serendipitous to be able to be here with Ryan too. So you might remember me from Blue Star Highway, the safety plan that we've been working on. We're coming back to work with the township on what we're calling responsive housing. So really just housing that's gonna respond to what the township is looking for and what the community members want, right? So I'm gonna keep this punchy and happy to talk through questions and kind of go through things with you, but here's what we've been working on. And to kind of overlap a little bit with what Ryan was discussing. There's population projections that show that Allegan County is gonna increase about 10% in population size over the next 15 years. This is from the University of Michigan. And there's gonna be thousands of housing units potentially available to absorb that demand, right? So I think the question for the township is, how does the township want to absorb that demand, right? Are we going to be reactive and kind of see what comes to us, or do we want to be more proactive, really set the table for the type of development pattern that the township wants to see? And thinking about the county specifically, this is really what Ryan was getting at, but 60% of the households in the county are 1 and 2 people. And I think the question is, do we have enough housing for them, for those types of households? I thought it was really interesting that 10% of the folks that live by themselves are actually over 65. So thinking about that from like a quality of life perspective as you age, if you're living alone, you're a senior, how do we make sure that we have really safe, welcoming, beautiful places for people to age in place as they get older here in the county? So do we have enough housing for these 60% of households? The answer is no. So in the county, 3 in 5 households are singles or 2 people, but 75% of the houses in the county are actually 3 or more bedrooms. So we got a lot of big houses and a lot of small households. And if we created 1 and 2 bedroom homes to match the amount of smaller households we have in the county, that'd be 14,000 people. 14,000 homes to match the number of population that's here. So a big switch between the smaller household sizes that we have available and the types of bedrooms on the houses that we have existing. So what do we hear? We actually went to the survey and got feedback from the community, and we had a really good response rate. So over 400 survey responses that were completed, 105 that answered some of the questions, and 336 for residents of the township. So we're going to look at specifically what township residents had said here. 61% of the respondents are living in 2-person households. So this is where, you know, a vast majority of folks are. 70% are 55 and older, and 66% are earning $100,000 or more. So this is who we're hearing from in the survey, these survey results. A couple of really good quotes that we heard that we want to just pull out. So housing for all incomes, needing affordable housing for young families to move in, people that want to work and live in the area. Can't expect people to commute. The challenges with short-term rentals, which I know that you all are aware of. Community pride. So people really, between community pride and the one on the bottom there for the township efforts, people are just really happy with being here. They love the township. We got a thumbs up and a smiley face emoji for the work that the township has been doing. Senior friendly housing. So having options for, like I said, folks to be able to age in place and be able to grow and maybe become empty nesters in the township and have housing choices for them. And then the natural beauty and the rural scenery, that's something that we're going to talk a little bit about here. There's really 2 things going on. We need more housing. We want to preserve the rural character and the natural scenery that we have in the township, right? Those are really 2 big factors that a lot of times, to Ryan's point earlier, can feel like they're in contradiction. And we want to think about ways that the township can really address both. This was a really interesting finding. So we actually polled the residents on giving like an A and B choice. So would you prefer to live in a neighborhood that is smaller and closer together, but schools, stores, and restaurants are within walking distance, or one that's larger and further apart, but schools, stores, and restaurants are far away? And 55% of respondents would prefer the smaller and closer together neighborhood compared to 45% preferring the larger and further apart. Now, if we think about the current development pattern in the township, how many places in the township can we think of that are smaller and closer together, but you can walk to places very easily, right? And there's not very many. Those are pretty few and far between. We had the larger and further apart kind of nailed down, especially in some of the other portions of the township that are further away from Blue Star. But if we have 55% of folks in the community that are looking for that smaller and closer together preference, then how can we kind of cater to them and increase our housing choices that are available? There was also affordability concerns. So, we have a challenge with short-term rentals again, and understanding, okay, where can workers live? Where can fixed income seniors live? Where can single family households live? So this is just responses directly from the survey and helping people understand kind of what the challenges they're experiencing with housing. We asked, finally, we asked specifically about housing along Blue Star. So if there were housing, new housing units along Blue Star, what types of housing would you want to see? It was pretty widespread, a little bit of everything. Mixed use, senior housing, townhomes, 2 to 3 story apartments. 92% picked at least one different type of housing, and there was a small minority that said they didn't want any housing along Blue Star. So understanding some of that, the survey responses and kind of the market demand for housing, we're getting a sense of like, where do we go from here? And what we've kind of landed on is really 3 things. So expanding housing choice, so helping residents have housing for all different phases of life, senior friendly, young professionals, working people, families, making sure there's housing available for every phase of life, but also preserving the rural and natural character of the township. So there's, like I said, quite a few places that are more rural focused, and we want to make sure that those continue to feel that way and maintain that charm that's in the township. And then housing specifically along Blue Star. So we want to coincide with the work that the township is doing with the road commission and with Blue Star Trails to make the corridor more of a pedestrian friendly, bike friendly, safe street. And adding housing to that will help kind of facilitate that. And again, to Ryan's point earlier, using the existing infrastructure that Blue Star has will help the city or the township kind of encourage that fiscal responsibility. So being able to reuse what you have to the maximum extent compared to spreading out a little bit further from the corridor. The figure on the right is from Kronberg, urbanist architects out of Atlanta, and they do a lot of interesting financial data that kind of shows the difference between the fiscal impact on a township when you start to pack it in a little bit more. So thinking about how we can use that in very strategic locations, I would add. So this isn't something that we would want to anticipate seeing in the vast majority of the township, to be honest. Like we want to preserve that rural character that folks are come here to enjoy. But there are certain places that we talked about with infill. If we're thinking about Blue Star specifically, if you can imagine some of the places along the corridor that are mowed lawns that have maybe a smaller building surrounded by a big grassy area that don't have trees on them. Some of those places that are really, that's what Lene mentioned, like underutilized. They're not really being utilized to their full potential, but they're already developed in some way. How can we do something more with those sites? So what we did is we took a very simple sketch of the Clearbrook and Blue Star Highway corridor to think about like what a phase 1 version 1.0 of Hamlet development might look like for the township. And what we did here is showed, if you can see at the northeast corner is where the plaza is going to be, and the 1-story building is where we're sitting right now. You can imagine currently there's no building, those other 3 buildings are not there. Okay, so those are grassy areas, parking in front of the Dollar General, and some kind of grassy forested area in front of the Best Western. And what we wanted to do is just start to show if Blue Star is able to start to narrow down the footprint and actually pedestrianize it a little bit more, add those multi-use trails that we're looking at, and really start to think about this site as maybe the Hamlet 1.0, what would it look like to start to add more housing to this specific area? And we were, really happy with kind of showing what the feel might look like. These are some kind of townhome condos that you might be able to use there. The building to the north in front of the Dollar General would be mixed use potentially, so having some ground floor retail. We just wanted to show something a little bit more conceptual in terms of like, what are we actually talking about when we're talking about what this means for the township and try to ground it in the context of the area. So thinking about where we go next, what we would want to look at is really, so thinking back to what Ryan showed with that picture of the house with the big yard in the front, garages in the front, right? That's kind of in the middle of development where we're trying to kind of hit everything. We want to hit green space, but we want to have big lot, we want to have a big home, but we want to be accessible to things. What we're kind of talking about with the township is continuing to kind of tip it off of that middle ground and go in different directions. So for a vast majority of the township, we're looking at zoning to make sure that it's preserving that rural character, and we want to make sure that it stays intact in the places that make the most sense. In certain areas, and starting probably with this Blue Star Clearbrook intersection, thinking about what it means on a zoning level to push for that more hamlet feel, where you're allowing some different housing choices and creating some different amenities and availability for housing options for, again, all of these different households that are living in the township at all different phases of life. So in a nutshell, that's kind of where we're thinking next steps go, is really just reviewing and kind of confirming zoning outside of the hamlet area to show that we're preserving that rural character, and then thinking about ways to start to increase housing choice right along Blue Star, really starting as a first step at Clearbrook and Blue Star. So what I think we would do longer term is maybe test it out and start to look at some zoning changes at that specific intersection. And then over time, we can kind of adapt and iterate and move forward as sort of like, you know, there's tweaks that go into it to make sure that we're hitting the needs that we want to hit. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I think Ryan's on as well. But yeah, thanks for your time.
First, I love all this. You guys have done quite a few years. I'm just wondering those last two slides.
Yeah.
I don't quite get the focus on Blue Star and Clearbrook.
Yeah.
Because Blue Star and Clearbrook right now has a cemetery, an miniature golf, a town hall,
yeah,
and a hotel.
Right.
So there might be a better intersection.
Do you want to talk?
I could talk about it. Yeah, I mean, we looked at the whole stretch, and I think one of the things that there's a few things that are interesting about the Clearbrook Blue Star intersection. One is it's one of the only sections that is really just nice and square and plumb, and it wouldn't take a lot of work to modify the road to, you know, reduce the shoulders, add the curb and gutter, add the sidewalks, add the bike trails. It's also the site of the township hall, which could be the center of the hamlet. John, you know that we're investing a lot of money in ripping up our parking lot in front, moving into the back of the building. No, this is how I'm explaining.
There's no room for housing.
So well, that's what we're trying to reimagine. So next door, you have a building that is essentially all parking. They have a large parking lot at the back, they have a building and a massive parking lot in the front. If we reimagine the size of the lots, it's quite possible that another structure could actually go in front of that strip mall.
Sure.
The Best Western has a very large lot. That very front part of the lot could be redeveloped as another housing building, which is shown here. And then you can have the access not on Blue Star, but right off of Clearbrook. And then what we all have to remember is we are less than a mile away from downtown Saugatuck. If there were housing here, you could walk to, I mean, how many things could you walk to or ride your bike? So this intersection has a lot of there's a lot of reasons why this intersection out of the other intersections along Blue Star has the most potential to test the waters for hamlet style zoning. So that's
on this side of this.
I think
the northern corridor of Blue Star. Yeah, so that's why. Yeah.
Because as I said, there's a cemetery on one.
Which is also great for, I mean, when you're looking at these hamlet style developments, you also want to have residents or new residents have access to green space.
Right.
So our plaza is green space, we're spending money on the cemetery to make it feel more park-like. That's a great place to walk a dog.
Oh, no, and it's great having mini golf.
And the mini golf could stand.
The slide struck me as showing housing.
It is, it's different.
Yeah.
It is different. That's,
There's other intersections.
I would say that this intersection has a lot of potential for increased housing now that wouldn't require the same kind of modifications that other intersections along Blue Star will require. And it also is within less than a mile of the downtown area.
So I would add, I would say that this is actually,
That is even closer.
this is the scale, so this is based on the existing parcels that are there. And we were able to fit, you know, about between 45 and 90 housing units at this intersection, so, yeah, to John's point, I think the hamlet would basically, this would be the southernmost point of this little hamlet, right, and it would probably, maybe over time, it would run up to Holland. So you could just think of the stretch from through up to Holland as having a little bit more of that infill potential and maybe adding some more residential. But we're just looking at a very small test case, right, to kind of get things going and kind of generate ideas.
I kind of like this location because it's more aspirational about, well, we really don't want the Dollar General there, so let's put something. Same with the Best Western. And I don't know how many times I've played mini golf, but still, I don't think it's the highest and best use of that corner.
Yeah.
So,
We still have it there, we didn't build over it.
Right.
oh, do it, okay.
You know, and being part of the Blue Star safety and also living off of Blue Star. Is, I honestly think, and I think this is a great idea, don't get me wrong with that. But the safety, as you hear about what's happening on Wiley Road and down on 135. You hear it over and over and over and over, I mean, it's the safety, and I don't. Before I honestly think you do this, residents need to understand the safety first. They need to see some change so that you can get across Blue Star. You can walk down Wiley with these huge densities like 135. I'm all for it. I think it's a great idea. However, there's a concern because now safety really has become, people are gonna walk across Blue Star. I mean, we want to walk. In order for me to go downtown, I have to walk across Blue Star.
But,
So that's my only concern with all this is we're not seeing the change for safety that you hear over and over and over again about those in the residents who have to cross over Blue Star.
Right.
So that's my only comment.
and
And again, I think it's a great idea, but
yeah, I mean, we're working with the township on the Blue Star plan, and this is actually showing, Blue Star narrow quite a bit, like significantly, because I 100% agree, and I think it's two sides of the same coin where you need to have the safe street design, and then you need to have some of that housing.
And I really do believe that they need to see this Blue Star change as we move forward with adding the housing, adding kids. You want to add kids, well, I'm sorry, Blue Star is not safe.
Yep.
It is not a safe road.
So like the people here, we're here, and they're still here, talking about Wiley.
Yeah.
If you brought the Wiley project and you have the trail that out of downtown Saugatuck or downtown Douglas, you can walk straight to a lake, a beautiful wide trail. If you brought that same development, but included the fact that you had a trail where you could get from Blue Star all the way to Lakeshore included in that. Because they're absolutely right, you know, one of my favorite walks is to go, you know, start in Douglas, you go down to the lake, go along the lake, and you come back Wiley, and then your nerves are shot because.
And all of a sudden, we're adding 260 people to that.
Well, yeah, so, I mean, and is it just Douglas? No, it would be Douglas and Saugatuck Township would have to be working hand in hand.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, we have our own residents coming here to yell at us about what they're doing in Douglas.
So in full transparency, and I'm glad I was here the day you both spoke, because our firm is working with the developer. Yeah, with Mosaic. So I was gonna give you my card, and I think one of the things that we wanted to look at, that's actually one of the concerns that we have. Taking off my Saugatuck Township hat on, putting on my Mosaic, working with him. I hope it's conveyed that we're passionate about safe, walkable, really beautiful places, and that's why we love working over here. So that's a concern that we have too, it's like, we wanna make sure it's safe, so I think that's a point well taken.
Can I just say something? Ryan been great. I spent some time with, the Douglas project that we're talking about. But I will say something that I didn't hear in his comments about the attainable. We all want this affordable housing, the attainable housing. But unless the developer is impacted, deed restrictions on short-term rentals, all of that, there's no guarantee our firefighters, our hard workers, our people that need that housing are going to get that housing. So there has to be some deed restrictions or zoning restrictions or state short-term rental restrictions, including in that plan.
Which I can see some of the, actually some of your vision helping with that, where if you have residential with office space down below, that helps force down the cost of the units.
Yeah.
Which, so I get that concept, I mean, that makes sense, and of course, it makes sense to do that along Blue Star with the businesses.
Yeah.
But, yeah, once again, it always comes back, like Denise said, to safety, and even these gentlemen were up here today, and what they're saying is they're saying the increased amount of traffic and, and the danger, but really what they're saying is we want a safe place to walk. It's probably less opposed to the development, but more opposed to creating that additional, traffic and, that forcing all that onto the road without, and then you take away their ability to walk safely down the road. And that's really
the
what.
burden on the township. And we didn't plan for.
Right, we had the same thing with the last development that just came through where, there are a lot of people were concerned about the traffic at 135th and 65th and Blue Star there. And, and as planning commission, what can you, we're always told there's, nothing you can do. I mean, that the county controls the road, there's nothing you can do. Well, that doesn't appease the residents when they're up here complaining about the additional traffic coming on. And I really don't think that they're truly upset about the additional traffic, it's just the fact that it's creating an unsafe condition. Potentially creating an unsafe.
The fact that we don't control speed limit, and we know Douglas is very good at controlling its speed limits. When they take 25 miles an hour on 130th or Wiley, they really.
Yeah, but it's the county, which, so I feel like this kind of puts the chicken before the egg type of thing where, but then again, I also understand this forces the safety part of it probably as well, from a planning perspective, but that's really hard to sell them.
Yes, it really is.
I think that's where we're at, and I really give kudos to the township for building a really good relationship with the road commission through the Blue Star process. Because I think to Lene's point earlier, she did mention that having verticality on the road actually does slow traffic down. There's research that shows that. So there's posted speed, right, where it says, well, I'm supposed to drive that number, but it feels like I can drive 80 miles an hour, which is design speed. So if you can change the design, regardless of what the number says, you start to add vertical elements, you start to slow down traffic. If we're able to come to the road commission and say, hey, this is really what we want to see happen here, there's start to get some momentum where you can change Blue Star and start to do some of that residential. So I hear your point on the chicken and the egg. And it's a little bit of everything all at once, yeah.
Did you see the article on, it was out of ABC, I think it was out of Saginaw. They were having the same discussion about the 85%, it was just within a week. And there was a woman who same issues. And they were talking about the 85 percentile in regards to, setting speed limits and so forth. And that came from 1930. It's like, okay, do you realize
Yeah.
this is 2025 and how things change?
Yeah,
And unfortunately, if there was some way we can get to, I don't know if Joey Andrews is, maybe we need to take a look
We've
at
asked them.
these 1930 issues is gone. We need to really think about, as you want to do development, that 85% is
yeah,
crap.
yeah. So, yeah, I think,
So I don't know if our state rep can help us.
yeah, I mean,
I've asked, I mean, this group could form a subcommittee and you can do I think that's beyond the scope of staff's work. I don't think that's a reasonable ask of me or Lene to write up legislation at this point in
No,
time.
I didn't know.
But I hear what you're saying.
If the board or if somehow or another, some
We have asked him
Some-
before,
entity is.
yeah,
Because I don't know, I'm not always sure that the planning commission really has that much clout.
I will say though, like from working with the roads commission, like what we're realizing is that we have to deliver a complete vision. Because the first thing that they'll say to us, when we say, we wanna narrow the shoulders, we wanna add curb and gutter, we want crosswalks. And we want sidewalks is, well, where are the people? That's the first thing they say. So what we're trying to do here is we're doing multiple things simultaneously. We have our initial concept, which is the Blue Star Safety Plan. We have another grant lined up, which is the Safe Street Action Plan, which Progressive is going to lead us on that. So we're gonna be able to get into more detail. The Road Commission is very much aware that we would like to do a complete redesign of Blue Star from Maple Street to 64th. But they would also like to see demonstration that we are going to have the increased density that we're anticipating. So if we can provide them with the future image of what that zoning looks like, it all comes together. So that's why we have this piece, but we're also working on the safety piece at the very same time. But unless you have all the pieces together, you know, you're saying we want the safety, the road commission wants proof of density, so we have to bring it all together. That's kind of the key.
So 20 minutes ago, the comment I wanted to make is, you're showing a master plan, and the only way this is gonna work is with public-private partnership and a master plan. Otherwise, we're waiting around for individual developers to squeeze in as many things as they can onto their piece of property per the zoning. And we're gonna get what we get. And I don't think that's ideal. We're able to qualitatively and quantitatively turn the dials and provide a great outcome.
Yeah.
Through a master plan. And the safety issues, look at 9th Street in Holland, where hundreds of Hope College students migrate multiple times a day across 9th Street for parking and for food and recreation and coffee. They put in 2 or 3 very bright lights that blink as a crosswalk. Problem gone. It was a very dangerous road for many, many years. There are solutions for safety.
yeah, so what I would say is, just keeping in mind that the township's really working with the road commission to try to make Blue Star a much safer, narrower street. Thinking about that, let's say that, yeah, we're able to like get that movement and Blue Star is actually able to kind of get narrower. Then there's the other side on the zoning that happens on the other sides of the curve, right? And I think that's where you all come in. It's like, if we can get to this point where Blue Star is a calmed 2-lane highway with multi-use trails on both sides, why not have townhomes on Blue Star, right? So I think that's where we're at. Like, this isn't something that we're gonna be able to do overnight, but I think as a planning commission, that's something that you can be thinking about is if the township's moving forward with the road commission, let's think about where specifically we want some of this density to happen and some of these different housing choices.
I feel a lot better about something like this that we're guiding than what happened last month, where people who've lived somewhere for multiple decades are now dealing with radical density jammed into their backyard that we couldn't stop it. Because our ordinance is allowed. We're gonna think this through. We didn't have a chance to think it through. They get to do what the ordinance says they get to do, regardless of the context. It was context agnostic.
We did think it through the year before when we changed ordinances.
The problem was the context, when I was looking at those people and what we inadvertently allowed it, we couldn't stop. It felt wrong, to me personally, I can't speak for everybody. Because we weren't able to consider context, here we are.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Yep, thanks.
Yeah. I know we're past our 2 hour, right? Oh, okay.
Three.
Okay. And I know it's gonna be dark, so.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Eric and Ryan. Very informative. Good job. Yeah. All right, so we'll move on to old business and seeing none, communications, correspondence first. Probably that letter from.
No, what other letters we have in here, but.
There's a one on the shelf.
Oh, yeah, there you go. So there's a letter, just, yeah. We responded to Michelle.
You responded to?
So
That was
just wanted you all to have it.
okay.
How did you say it?
Well, I said that we were equally concerned and surprised, and that's why we have the tree protection ordinance, and we worked on that with our new code, and we recently amended the code, to have that grading plan process as well. Aside, I guess, you all have this wonderfully thick, beautiful packet, that Morgan, put together. This is not the full ordinance. Please go through here, replace the pages, right? So this represents everything that was changed. So this is not the full thing. We need you to peel out the old stuff and replace the new, okay?
Okay. Thanks for explaining. All right, planning commissioner comments.
I have two. As we mentioned, I think Gordon mentioned about the master plan. What's the thought about future master plan for the township since Douglas changed theirs? Are we still in the tri-county or tri-township? Or is this township ready to move forward with a master plan?
Yeah, that is something that is in the strategic plan for the township board, so that has been identified as a priority over the next. The strategic plan is a 3-year time horizon. Daniel and I are buttoning that document up, but it's in there. The thought is that the township would have its own plan that would deal with kind of these very township specific conversations, our housing, our utilities, parks, things like that. The tri-community plan, we're not saying that we don't want to be part of that either, but maybe that is more of a document that deals with the issues that the communities face as a whole.
And there is money, I don't expect, because it's a huge task, I don't expect this body to finish it in 1 year. But there is substantial money set aside in the budget to start it this year. So you can go through the process of like figuring out an RFP and finding a consultant and starting that process, but I imagine it's gonna take this year and next year to complete it.
Just know how long it took us to do the zoning.
Yeah.
The other thing, the comment is bylaws.
Yeah.
To update our bylaws as to what we're really doing. So I'm happy to send, I think I did a strike through, to the rest of the commissioners and whether we should put that on the agenda.
So you sent it to me.
Right.
Maybe, is there another commissioner that you could work with to kind of finalize and come up with a proposed set of changes?
So
And
look
then
at
bring
what I
that
have
back.
and have one other person and adjust the strike throughs and bolds and so forth and then present.
And then present it and bring it back.
Sure, if anybody wants to. Yeah, okay, we'll be happy to do that. I think that's all I have.
Any other planning commissioner comments?
I was at the ZBA this morning and just FYI, they say it. What's that?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, you were gonna bring that up?
No, I'm glad you did. I've moved on, I've moved meetings.
How was-
They overturned
They overturned.
the use determination.
So the project.
So they'll be on the
So that means it'll come
September
back, yeah.
Okay, so
Come back, what was over here?
our last plan.
Blue Star Bend, the Blue Star Bend office with the garage.
Okay, so Lene, with that change, are we able to, is there a conflict of interest that we are not able to participate with the site review, or is there something within the ordinance to say that we may have a discussion in regards to the site plan?
Let's talk about that with our attorney.
Okay.
I'll,
It will occur,
yeah,
I'm sure David on.
yeah, right. Okay,
Thank you.
It is coming back to us.
yes.
Oh, good, that's still.
All right, township board update.
The board this month did, approve a fee schedule resolution, change the fee schedule. Approved the temporary sign at the entrance to Saugatuck, 3-year agreement, made some payments to, Apex and Site Works in Maple Street. Made a resolution for contributing to the River Bluff Park. Approved the Township Hall redesign construction phase. Heard a request from the Ironwood setback request. Did not make a decision.
That's correct.
And the Singapore Retreat PUD. This is the first PUD approval that the Township Board has heard with these members on the board. So they asked for another month to consider it thoroughly. So they didn't decide that. And we had a successful manager performance evaluation.
He's still here.
Thank you. Any staff project updates?
None other than what's here, so, Blue Star Brewery, haven't heard anything from them. Best Buds expired, we sent the letter. AutoZone, or Auto Camp, there's a new ownership group, they're doing some due diligence. And, we had a meeting with them a few weeks ago, they're looking to start this fall, but I think they're still doing some due diligence, so we haven't heard anything. Recent, and then the wooden iron, that was a special use for the recycling, where they're taking products, putting them there, doing concrete recycling and digging a pond and mining sand. They have been operating without a permit, so we did contact them, tell them, you can't be doing that. The site has changed since we first heard them on the agenda. Remember that they have, they want to reduce their side yard setback from 100 feet to 50. And if they do that, they need approval of the adjacent property owners. Both the city and the township own land on their south and west property line. The city said no. The township tabled their decision. We've since heard from Wooden Iron has an attorney now, Randy Skipper. And Randy said that he spoke with Ryan at the city and was hoping that the city might reconsider. I haven't heard any further information on that.
Is he allowed to still bring material in? Because I've seen numerous semis go back there and dump material.
Well,
Just because
we have to, I feel like we should probably put a formal letter together on letterhead about that, but I did let Randy know that. And Randy was gonna let Brian Timmer, the owner, know as well.
So do I understand this correctly, that if you want to modify your setback in your work, doesn't have a problem with it, you can't have it modified?
Only in the instance of this, of a pond and mining, only for that. Yeah.
Yeah, something unusual.
Yeah, no, that would not be across the board.
Quick question about the roundabout, are there any proposed or planned changes to the roundabout?
For the lights.
But the uplighting should be on the sculpture soon, but there's no modification to the
Signage,
blinking lights, anything like that, but I've got. People have been asking me. But don't forget tomorrow's the dedication. And let's go.
Mr. Chairman, I am not able to drive in the
Yes,
dark,
okay.
so I'm asking permission to
Absolutely.
boot out.
We can finish this here. Second public comment period, open it up, anyone?
No one on
Anyone, no one? Okay, we'll close second public comment period. And then we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.